This is the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel. My name is Neil Saravanamutu. Today is Monday, the 31st of March. We are here to talk about the last week at Ottawa City Hall. We've got a few items to cover today. We're going to talk about the Osgood by-election that's coming up. We're going to talk about the e-scooter program for 2025. We're going to talk about City Hall reports and why they're so rarely written in plain English. And we're going to talk about cuts to the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. And then, of course, we will have our lightning round where we respond to any questions and comments that you have for us. As always, I'm joined by our panelists, Joanne Chianello and John Willing. Welcome to you both.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
So, Joanne, you have a bit of a sabbatical coming up. Do you want to tell us about that?
It sounds like it's a break, but in fact, actually, I am on a very time-intensive but short project that I'm working on. Comes to an end April 28th. And so I don't know if that date, is familiar to you at all. And then I will be back after that.
Okay. And you're sure you're not going on holiday here?
Not so much.
Okay. And of course, I should say to our listeners that Joanne will be gone for the next 4 weeks, but we will have guest panelists in during that time.
They won't be as good as me, though.
They will not.
No. Who could completely
Thank you.
Equal your...
That's what I was looking for. That's what I was looking for, John.
Okay, first topic is the Osgood by-election. Right. So the city has announced its plans for the by-election. Some names have been put forward. John, can you get us up to speed on what we know?
Yes, we checked the candidate list before taping.
Thank goodness.
Right? We check our facts before we go to air. Anyway, there are 5 candidates as of the offices closing today. At the City of Ottawa. 5 candidates. The by-election is not till June. It's not till June 16th, but there's lots of time for people to register for the by-election. I think, when is it? I have the date written down here. May 2nd is the last day to register for the by-election. So plenty of time for people in Osgood Ward to figure out if they want to run.
Or not want to run.
Or for people to even drop out of the race too, if they want to.
So who's put their name forward?
Well, I have the list right here in front of me, Neil. There's some familiar names on here, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
for sure.
I know some of these.
And the first name at the top, who must have registered first, is Doug Thompson, the former councillor and former mayor of Osgood. Colette Lacroix.
Okay, I would like to say that Doug was in Osgood politics since 1980. He is 79 this year.
Yeah, and he's kind of been itching. If we're going to pause here on Mr. Thompson, he's been itching to get back into it. I think for many years now.
Not many, since he put George DeRuse in.
Well,
he helped George DeRuse win, and didn't like the job George DeRuse did, and now wants to come back. Too late. We'll see. It's up to the people of Osgood Ward to see if it's too late or not.
He's always been in the mix in some way, right? Mm-hmm. In some kind of political fashion. So anyway, Doug's back. We have Colette, and forgive me if I mispronounce any of these names. Maybe you can help me out here, guys. Colette Lacroix Veltuis.
Now, I have to say that I noticed that Colette was at George DeRuse's swearing in at Queen's Park.
That's fascinating.
Is this going to be the DeRuse candidate?
Well, and will the new MPP back a candidate? This candidate, I don't know.
We will find out.
Well, there is you found a photo of them while he was getting sworn in for an MPP. So I think it's a pretty big sign. Pretty strong sign that he's going to back her.
Okay.
I would also like to say they're great Wagyu farmers, that family, and I've had their beef. They sell it at the Ottawa Farmers Market.
Great. We have Dan O'Brien, who I think has run for office before.
Last time, yeah.
Yeah, Isabel Skalski, is it? Skalski? Who is from Greeley, I do believe, and Jennifer Von Connet, who registered today. So we have a race so far.
Yeah, Isabel too is she's the president of the Greeley Community Association. Like you see her on Twitter, she's always has a lot of events that she's covering, but is also a senior public servant. So that'll be interesting. Jennifer, I don't know too much about her. She just registered today. So, and it's interesting because it seems like it's in June, such a long way away. But actually, the real election, not the by-election, but the full election, you get 6 months to officially what is the word I'm looking for? Campaign, that's the word. Yeah, you can register at the beginning of May. The election's not till the end of October. And also you can unofficially campaign before then, right? So people have a long time if they want you to go door to door. By-election is very short time. You don't know that, and by its nature, with a by-election, you don't know that the person is dropping out. And so it's very quick. And it's hard to get the attention of people. And so, especially in 2.5 months. And the first month of that is a different election.
So what sort? Well, we'll come to that in a minute. But what sort of issues, municipal issues, do you think will come through?
Well, I think like certainly in rural Ottawa, things like roads are always a talker. You know, this part of Ottawa, we talked about Taywin in the last pod, and I think this will become a by-election issue, I think. And then, but also like ambulance response times, think about policing. Quite frankly, anything that suburban or urban Ottawa are worried about or concerned about affects the other parts of the city too. So community facilities, recreation opportunities, so all sorts of things.
General affordability, that's every taxpayer's concern. And I think also, especially in rural areas, there's always a sense, and I find this actually everywhere you go, there's always a sense that your tax dollars are going to some other part of the city, right? But I think in rural areas in particular, you see big projects like the LRT sucking up so many dollars, and you're like, why are we paying for these expensive big city projects when in the rural area where we're growing food and doing all these important things that support the city, are we getting enough attention? So I think that's the kind of issues that we're going to hear about.
And of course, there will be another election happening at the same time. So is this one going to get any attention? Like, I feel sorry for the people knocking on doors.
I think not till May. Like,
I
can't imagine.
Yeah, the crossover, like the federal election ends before the registration period ends for the by-election. So I don't think there's going to be any cross wires. People might be a little sick of elections down in Osgood, but I think throughout May you might see more of the campaigning happening throughout May, closer to the by-election.
Yeah, I don't see the debate coming in before later in May. But there is a problem. Like, the turnout for by-elections is already really low, and I mean, this is the third by-election in 6 months that people are going to this year. I mean, it's a lot of electioning, and so I worry about the turnout.
Okay. And John, just remind us of the date.
That is, everyone mark it down, get ready, Monday, June 16th.
We might have to move the podcast to the Tuesday that day.
Yeah, I think we will. Let's move to e-scooters. So we
gosh, how many years have we been reporting on e-scooters, John?
Yeah, and so on that point, it's another 5-year pilot project, right?
Yeah.
So why do we keep having to do pilot projects on this, and what's gonna happen this year? How's it gonna be different?
Okay, I will start with the why it's going to be a pilot project, and in for once, I'm actually cutting the city some slack.
Yeah,
and it is but they could have, to our next topic on writing reports better. I think they could have explained it a little better. And what I understand anyway is that it is a shared project with the province. The province actually has to pass legislation to make e-scooters legal. And so they've had a 5-year pilot project. I think they were supposed to get like all the information in from cities and then figure out, what the legislation was. And I believe instead of just doing it this year when they had a few other things on the go, they just extended it for another 5 years. And some, cities don't have to do it. They opt into it. Like, for example, City of Toronto does not have an e-scooter program. And so what they'll do is at the end of the 5 years, they collect data and they consult with people and say, what do you think?
Okay, so John, what's going to be different this year?
Well, you're going to see more scooters late at night and early in the morning by looks of it. So it's going to be 24 hours a day. The rental e-scooters are going to be allowed. It sounds like the city is going to go with 2 providers of those rental e-scooters that we've come to know and love, like some of us anyway. And they're going to be available 24 hours a day, whereas up until now, they've only been available between the hours of, I think, 5 a.m. to 1 a.m. And now they're going to be allowed to be running all hours.
And maybe like in some more parts of the city. It sounds like every year they might expand the areas where they're going to be running that program little by little. And councillors were very clear to say, hey, please consult with us ahead of time, because there's always some controversy about people either riding them on the sidewalk or in particular parking them on the sidewalk where they're not supposed to.
And this is I think this is the interesting part of the non-debate, I guess, this year, is because in years previous, we've been hearing complaints about scooters being parked on the sidewalk, thrown across the sidewalk, people riding scooters down sidewalks. But we didn't hear any of that around the committee table this time around.
No.
And this was a theme that we were covering on an annual basis almost when we were down at City Hall. And so that tells me maybe things are getting better. I don't think they're perfect. But the complaints aren't such that the councillors have to change their mind on this pilot project.
Well, that was, I mean, kind of the remarkable thing that there was actually almost no discussion at all on it, right? It was just about as this program expands geographically and moves into my ward, just make sure, me, councillor, make sure you tell me before it comes in.
And maybe the BIAs too, because they want to know where they're being parked, that kind of thing.
And well, the e-scooters too have been seen as part of an answer, as in the larger transportation question for the city. whereas people could take an e-scooter and park at an LRT station and get on a
It's
on a
amazing that we
train.
have that, but we can't get a bike share program that works.
Yeah, something
Like,
that
it's
can't
really
that
kind
doesn't
of
pay for
amazing.
itself, or maybe
Neil's
more.
like, oh, wait till you're going to have a whole show on that.
Yeah. So anyway, so more e-scooters, maybe more e-scooters. Like if they're going to extend the communities, we assume to see more e-scooters. But I was looking at the report, and the report is long, and it talks about how many hospital trips there have been. They talked about how there were 55,000 unique riders.
But the hospital
last year, which
trips,
is
they
interesting.
also say like that's not just the rentals. That's also people with their own e-scooters.
Yeah, we
Like,
have
so-
an e-scooter at home.
Yeah. Oh, do you?
We do.
You ride around?
I'm trying to figure out how to use it still because we live in a walkable community that has bike paths too.
You can't
And I feel
take-
very lazy to take out the e-scooter to go do things.
Yeah.
You can't really lock it anywhere if you want to go to the grocery store. Some
Can't you
people
take it
do.
to here? Can't you take it to Algonquin College? A little too far?
I don't know if the battery will make it from where I live. But anyway, so it's but it's funny because when this first came up at City Hall, it was a
So
debate.
controversial.
It was a debate about whether this program is going to illustrate that Ottawa is a city that fun forgot if council did not approve this project. It was such a lightning rod for discussion. And now we've moved. I was watching the debate, and the chair of the committee is Councillor Tierney. And it sounded like he wanted to move the debate through. I think Councillor Dudas put up her hand, said, I have a question. Councillor Tierney was eager to push forward. So now we're not even
He's
really
always
debating.
been in favor. He's always been in favor of it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Let's move on to the next topic, which is actually in that same committee meeting, and that was the Committee of Infrastructure and Public Works, which
Yeah.
we used to call transportation, right?
Now we call it something else.
So there was a couple of motions that councillors put forward around the road safety plan, and that's with our cameras, with our traffic cameras. There's money that's generated from those.
And I think it's both the red light and the speed
That's
cameras,
correct.
right? Yeah.
That's correct. And so there were a couple of motions that councillors put forward initially that said we'd like to direct some of that to certain priorities, and then a number of councillors came back and said this should be demand driven. Let's put them in the need wherever the need is highest. So fair enough. So those motions came back again, and they were kind of watered down, and I don't think they actually said much. But all of that is to say, I read those motions and I had no clue what they were talking about.
Okay,
I
read
read
it,
the
read-
reports.
Okay, read it.
So let me read this and you tell me what this is. So the motion says, direct staff to identify up to $10 million in direct funding in 2026 to the Warranted Traffic Control Devices Program to further reduce the current backlog of warranted intersections in need of funding.
They should put warranted in a few more times.
Yeah. So what on earth does that even mean?
Okay, so I think we knew, but I had to think about it. I put it into AI, and here's what AI says. Ask staff to find up to $10 million in 2026 to fund traffic control devices so we can fix more intersections that need them.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, that's better, but
It is better.
but what does that mean?
basically-
Traffic lights?
No, it's like
Everything.
intersections that have been found to need something, right? To need stop signs, lights, bulges, like some kind of mitigating, which is probably not a word, like when you want to talk about like real
Safety
English.
features.
Yeah, safety features.
Yeah.
The features to make intersections safer. The warranted part of it means we've already seen that like it needs something, right? But to your point on the like straight language, like to me, when you talk about trust in government, and I know this is like a big, like highfalutin subject, but part of it is people don't trust you when they, and we're going to talk about this for the next subject, next item too, in the lightning round, but people don't have trust in their government when they can't understand what their government is doing. And when you're saying, can you find $10 million, up to $10 million to get all of these intersections that are already problems to try to fix some of them, when you can't say it like that, like when you say it in this way that doesn't even mean anything. And by the way, this motion is stupid anyway. Sorry, I know it's well-intentioned, but staff said, this is what we already do.
That's right.
This is where we put the money. What are you talking about? So yeah, I'm with you. Like if you need to say something in a technical way for the bylaw or a law, have that later. But like in the description of what this is about, please just talk normally.
Yeah.
Well,
John?
I agree with you, obviously. And we're in bureaucratic Ottawa, so things are going to be in bureaucratic language all the time. But there is a struggle between the people who work in a government who want to sound professional and sound like they have authority with their prose. And then on the other side, what Joanne's talking about is the audience, people who are consuming this information and trying to understand what it means. And so I would make a
struggle
plug.
with that in consulting because there's consulting language. I'm like, I can't talk like that or like that.
And I would make a plug to say, hey, people, like read your news and listen to your news and watch your news, because the job of professional journalists is take that information and not dumb it down, but make it so people understand what it means. And sometimes, I don't know how you feel about this, Joanne, but sometimes when you're down at City Hall for a long time covering that beat, you get caught up into the language sometimes, and you have to check yourself that you're not using the word warranted, right? Which is a very specific word for design guidelines in the city. And so, I think of also judges, right, in the criminal justice system. They're often lauded when they're writing decisions in plain language. You often see someone share a decision, say, look at this judge using plain language to describe this complicated concept. Economists, another great example. So,
and you get a free pass.
No.
But I think you're right, Neil, and Joanne too. Like, I think that staff could really help people who live here just to write in plain language.
Can I ask for both of you? I mean, you spent a lot of time, many years covering City Hall. What is the norm here? Is it plain language, or is it what we are seeing here?
It depends who writes it. And I think it's getting less and less plain language. I think they're getting less understandable, to be honest. Except, of course, when you've been covering it a long time, you can kind of absorb what you think it means, right? And so there's two ways on when people are repeating things, like, it's like John and I, for a long time, we are there, and you get caught up in that language and you just use it because you know what it means. The other side of that is people quote it because they're not sure what it means and they don't want to get it wrong. So they just quote exactly what it says, and then no one really knows. And then, so we're going to get to a point later where none of us know what we're talking about. So I think we need to nip this in the bud. And I think, I know I'm defensive on this, probably John is too. Sometimes writing, if you're not at a newspaper or like a place where writing is the main thing, it is not seen as that important, like as if everyone can write. Not true. And as we've read like many, many reports, we're like, what is this about? And it's complicated. And I think they need to spend every department at the city, in every government, not just the city, every level of government needs to pay attention to how they are describing what they are doing. Because if you want people to believe in your government, they need to understand what you're doing. Yeah.
So maybe we can end this discussion with a plea to any counselors who are listening, and I know there's a few, that when staff help you prepare a motion, can you push back if it is not in plain English, so that if you can't understand it, it needs to be explained to you, then that's pretty much what's going to happen with the general public too. So that's our plea to anyone that's involved in the process.
And there's been enough journalists who come to council who can make these changes, so that, I would expect it to happen.
Okay, let's move to the topic of the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. So there's major cuts coming to the budget. It also involves redistricting. I think I got that there.
Redistricting. That's not a word. Come on.
Changing boundaries.
There we go.
So can you explain what's going on here and what sort of impact it's having on people? And then what is the role of City Hall in all this?
Wow. I mean, look, this pod could be just about this, or and another hour on top of that. But at a very, very high level. The English Public School Board is looking at redrawing its boundaries for its community schools, which means families in many cases, will have to change schools right in the middle of their children going to a school. And that could happen not this coming school year, but next year in 2026.
So they are going to school up to grade 3, and then after that they have to go to a different school, or what?
Or even like they started kindergarten and all of a sudden next year they'll have to start I guess that would be in grade 1 or 2. But anyway, starting in fall 2026.
And it could be a different school than their sibling.
Right. Mm-hmm. So you can imagine the chaos and the outcries this has caused. I think the school board has received 10,000 or a correspondence from 10,000 people since they released the draft boundary changes in February. And so it is a hot topic. I would argue it's the hottest topic in the city right now. If you've been reading the letters to the editor of the daily newspaper, if you've been reading Reddit boards, if you've been reading, I'm personally involved in a chat where parents are talking about this, in many chats actually. And so it's super hot. I know the school board is coming up with some draft proposals to change the draft sometime soon in the next few days. So the question, to your point, Neil, what does City Hall have to do with this? And
nothing.
Schools are provincial, right? We have trustees elected. part of the municipal governance process, who are elected to be a part of the school boards. But I think what parents are saying is, look, our city councilors should be involved, because in some cases this has to do with what we just talked about, road safety issues, because some families will now have to cross arterial roads or busy roads to go into another district to take their families to school. And so they would argue councilors and City Hall should be involved in stepping in and saying, hey, wait a second, we're concerned about the fabric of our communities. We're concerned about the safety of our families, trying to walk to school in sustainable ways and not taking the car to other parts of the city to take our kids to school.
Yeah.
So maybe the city should be involved in some way.
And how have councillors responded?
I haven't heard, like I heard rumblings of councillors speaking up. But on the whole, as City Hall, as an apparatus, I don't think they have taken this on as a cause to pursue around the council table.
Yeah. But the one thing now, Joanne, I'm sure when your property bill arrives in the mail, I'm sure you open it up and look at it in great detail.
Yes, actually, I do, to be honest. But
Right. Okay, so then you know
there's
that,
an education levy on it, right?
and it's about 10% of that bill,
now,
right?
it has nothing to do with the city, though. The province just says, here's what we're charging for education. Collect it for our city. The city has zero input in it. They have zero authority over it. I understand parents upset about this, and I also understand the desire for their counselor to talk about community issues, even if they're not absolutely city ones. But man, if I were a counselor, you would not want to wade into this. It's really difficult. I feel bad for the school board. One of the things they've been trying to do is offer French immersion in all schools, and because it's actually much fairer, and I think that's the right decision. But it's really difficult to make sure that everybody is in the school they want to be in. So I would not want to do it if I were a counselor.
You know, one last point about the tax bill, because I enjoy it too. And
Paying it?
well, no.
Yeah, that part's
no,
bad.
it's painful to pay, right? And that's when you
No
actually
way.
look at that bill, well, it's because 25% of it is going to provincial programs. So 10% for education.
I thought you meant logistically it's painful to
No,
pay.
no.
It's
Just,
easy.
And so it's incredible actually that the province has got away with this, making the cities collect the money, making the cities take bear the brunt of people looking at their tax bill and saying, my taxes are too high.
I can't wait till we do the budget issue on this later this year, because there's always a giant slide that shows like big pie chart slide. It's like, here is the stuff that the province makes us collect for. And here's this little tiny part that was, that like we deal with. Right. And yeah, it's difficult for them, for the city.
You know what that means?
It's the lightning round.
It's dinner time.
Listen, let's dinner time.
Also that.
Let's keep on the theme of money and budget. So the city reported that that there's a $44 million budget surplus for 2024, and this will go to committee next week. But the report's been out. So, and what's interesting is 12 million of that comes from higher than expected pills. So payments in lieu of payments in lieu of taxes, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. A little bit awkward for the mayor's Fairness for Ottawa campaign. But my question for both of you is $44 million. That's probably going to go into general reserves. That's just sort of, gets carved away before anyone has a chance to get their fingers on it. What would you do with that $44 million if it was your choice?
Transit.
And capital? A capital project?
Well, maybe, but I mean, isn't there still a transit operational shortfall this year?
The 21 million or something like that. Yeah. So transit,
That's
a good place. I think of, yes, that's obvious. I don't know. I think like Byward Market. There's a big revisioning exercise happening there. Why not gussy up a part? Yeah, again. It's like an annual news story, pretty much. Library, I don't know, operationally, I like the idea of trying to keep library branches open later. I know this is just one pot of money, and you just can't but it can only go so far. But look, the city doesn't know what's going to happen with the U.S. tariff situation too. We're going to find out more of that maybe this week. So maybe they have to keep some in the bank for a rainy day.
Well, yeah, and I think that's probably the response. But that's always the response, right? We need to keep money in the bank for the rainy day.
Or maybe at the end when you have a deficit at the end of the year, and then you have some money left to plug it in.
Yes, but on the other, the way that I approach it is, so $44 million is not an insignificant amount of money And if you notice, there's all these proposals that keep coming to council, and there's never any money for anything, right? Never any money for anything new. And I wonder if this is just an opportunity to fund some of those. I'll give you an example. The one committee heard about a proposal from the community health centers, and I should say I'm a member of the board of the Centertown Community Health Center. But it was a proposal that the city should be spending money to help people fill out income tax returns, because there's so many of the benefits that we get as citizens from the federal and the provincial governments is done through the tax system. So if someone is not filling out an income tax form, they're not getting those benefits. And there's a lot of low income people that just simply do not have the resources or the ability to fill one out. So a proposal came that we could spend $3 million of city money and bring, I think it was $72 million of federal and provincial money into the pockets of low-income residents. That's the sort of thing where I would love to see just a little bit of that 44 being hived off so that we can do these special projects.
Well, I bet there's like every councillor on the table would have a special project to bring to the table for their community too.
I also think that, and I love that project, by the way. I know we've talked about it before, but I also know that transit has a negative reserve, and we probably use some money in that. Yes,
and as you mentioned, it did have that big operating deficit going into the year too, even though it's not supposed to. Actually, so we'd love to hear from listeners. You tell us if it was your choice, how would you spend that $44 million? Send us a comment. We'd love to hear that. So Joanne, I want to talk about.
That was not 1 minute, by the way. Come on.
Yes, you're right.
I'm just saying.
Who's counting?
I know. I noticed he doesn't get the bell when he goes over 1 minute, but okay, that's okay. It's your podcast.
Okay, there we go.
You're the master of the bell, so it's fine.
Okay, this one will be 1 minute. Actually, this one, if you want to go a bit longer, I'd entertain that. So during city council meeting, Joanne, this week, council
last
went.
Week.
You're right. Last week, sorry.
Wednesday. Mm-hmm.
They went in camera to talk about stage 1 LRT litigation, and they were in camera for 2.5 hours. So, I mean, we don't know what happened there, but does it really warrant this level of secrecy?
Okay, so this is a subject that makes me completely crazy because transparency, accountability, those are my two watchwords for City Hall. So two things. One, of course, if you're getting a legal update and they're telling you about strategy and things, some of that, of course, should be in camera. You know, you're not going to talk about the lawyers aren't going to talk about, the legal threats to city council if certain things happen. But on the other hand, there is no reason, I believe there is no reason why we can't know what this is actually about. I'm actually surprised they even said line 1 or LRT 1, because sometimes they don't even tell you which LRT it's about. I think you can say this has been going on since June, and I think there's been like at least 10 or 12 hours where they've been in camera talking about this issue, and we don't know anything that it's about other than at some point last June, the council gave staff direction to come to a settlement with Rideau Transit Group. I don't know what's happened there. Obviously, there has not been a settlement, but I understand hundreds of millions of dollars. We don't know what RTG is arguing, why they think we owe them money or what we are arguing to them. I don't see why we cannot be told the parameters of this dispute. I would also like to point our listeners to the Municipal Act, because by the time a year is up, you're going to know the Municipal Act so well. Section 239, 2, E and F. And that is that, I won't read it all.
Let me write that down.
Exactly. But it's that, a meeting, it basically says that a meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public for litigation, potential litigation, to advance solicitor-client privilege. The way that speaking of motions, how they're written, it says that, we have to go in camera because this is a legal issue. You do not have to go in camera. I just want it to be clear to everyone. It is council's choice to go in camera. Mm-hmm. I also think council can push back to say, let's report out some of the information about this. Not the super secret stuff, but some of it.
Well, it's council's decision that they're going to go in camera.
Yes.
But what you're saying, the municipal law defines what can and cannot be considered in camera.
No, it does. What they say is that you can like it says that these legal situations, council can choose to go in camera, but it's not that it has to be in camera.
Right.
The
Okay.
only two reasons where you have to be in camera are MFIPA and ombudsman related.
Right.
They're very technical reasons. The rest of it is up to council. I would also like to add that I believe today, late today, so much stuff happened right before this podcast. The council has, there is a special council meeting this Wednesday. The only issue is another in-camera LRT briefing, which leads me to believe that maybe they're getting to a decision at some point. Maybe something's up. Maybe we will finally find out what this is all about.
Well, stay tuned. John and I will talk about that next week.
It should be, just to add on that.
I'll call in.
If people think that things are being discussed in camera, which they shouldn't be discussed
Yeah.
behind closed doors, they can file a complaint with the meetings investigator who can go and check it out and see if things are above board in camera.
Oh, that's good to know. I did not know that.
Yeah, you're not allowed to have any boats in camera, for example.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, John, let's talk about boulevard gardening. That was actually a big discussion at committee. And
We're
if we
failing on this lightning round, so I just
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I know, but all right.
that was an
Long
important
storm.
topic.
Long storm.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So boulevard gardening, the first couple of feet, I think it's maybe 6 feet of each of our gardens next to the road belongs to the city. It's their right of way. And so a couple of years ago, we were allowed to now plant flowers in that right of way. And committee has talked now about planting food. So can you tell us what the discussion was and what we can expect?
Well, yeah, Joanne and I were joking before. A lot of people don't know the city owns a lot of like frontage to your land until your pipe breaks, and then there's a dispute. Anyway, but yes,
And then the city has no responsibility for it whatsoever.
but so now, yes, the committee talked this week about allowing people to plant food in pretty much the city-owned part of your frontage. And so, yes, I guess.
And also the part between like the road and the sidewalk.
Yeah, the
right?
traditional boulevard, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Where I come from, we had boulevards everywhere with the part between the road and the sidewalk. And so.
But not a boulevard in the middle of the road.
Not a median.
Not the median.
No.
Yeah.
No. And so other cities are doing this. So the city of Ottawa says, we should be doing this too. A lot of people want it. So let's make it happen. Planting food specifically. So veggie gardens and boulevards, look out, here they come. I'm looking forward to all the police reports of people stealing lettuce and tomatoes and what have you in the boulevards. I don't know if that's going to happen.
Throw in
But
tomatoes.
Maybe. So we'll see what happens. So open up your gardens, everyone, and plant some veggies in the front.
And you can put planters and
That's the big thing, yeah.
And,
Well,
yeah.
Joanne, I noticed that you can put planters, but you can only go up to 1 meter, right? So why? And does that make sense?
I think it's because you don't want to block the view. Like say you're coming out of a driveway or whatever. I mean, the same thing for hedges and things like that. Yeah. But I don't know. I mean,
No
we're
corn
always
stalks?
worried.
Corn stalks on the
God,
boulevard?
that'd be fun. Do you remember when they first started because somebody planted flowers and then someone complained about it? Like many years ago, this is where this started. Somebody planted it used to be, it is literally, they have to rewrite the bylaws to say that because it's illegal to pull up the grass in the boulevard.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, geez.
I know.
Don't come to my
I know.
place.
Because it's the city's grass, even though the city doesn't take any care of it. So when people I think in the Glee were planting it, and I remember David Chernyshenko, the counselor at the time, he's like, are you kidding me? Like someone complained about it. And so this has been going on a long time, like every argument in Ottawa. Like we have billions of dollars of LRT that are being discussed in secret, and we're spending hours worrying about some plants that were
Some lettuce in the
Yeah.
on the boulevard. Let's
Yeah.
just do that stuff.
Although, I watched the debate or the discussion, and I was actually quite surprised how productive it
Yeah.
was. And it really sounded
And
like
progressive.
Yes, exactly. And city staff were working with councillors, we're working with communities. Why can't it always be like this?
Well, it should, right? But I mean, here's the thing.
But it's
When
also
the-
6 years in the making.
And when the city hears that other municipalities are doing it, then it's easier for them just to do the same thing. And that's what often happens in municipal politics. They want to see a test case in other municipalities before they greenlight something local.
Okay. Joanne, in Toronto, city councillors voted
I forgot we
themselves.
were going to talk about this.
Yes, they voted themselves a pay increase of 24%. So from 137,000 to 170,000. In the city of Ottawa, councillors make 120,000. So does the Toronto increase put pressure on our council?
Yeah, I just cannot see this council doing this. It wasn't so many years ago that they went through a process that was a little bit controversial because, where else do you have to actually vote to your own raise to yourself? And they put in a formula where it was somehow, I think it's tracked against what there's a cost of living increase and kind of tracked to what the public service gets. And so there is a formula, and they did it there so they don't have to ever touch it again. So I think in Ottawa, it's now up to, I just looked on the sunshine list. So I think councillors made last year about $119,000. To be honest, like a backbench MP makes $200,000. And, you have a party that basically does a bunch of work for you and helps you and tells you what to do and how to vote. And so actually, I would say councillors do way more work, but it's really hard to bring that. And I just don't see this council doing that.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just like, it sounds like they haven't had an increase in this Toronto City Council for years and years and years. So now they're playing catch up. And this is the problem that happens.
Okay. John, you're our man on salt. And we talked about it last week.
How did you know?
We talked about it last week. Couple of listeners wrote in to say, why is the city not doing more looking at alternatives to salt? So, we had this motion that, I think it's a motion that came forward to say, let's look at how much salt we're using and whether it's the appropriate amount. That's what the city's going to be studying. But what city staff have not been directed to study is whether there are alternatives that we could be use. So I know that you mentioned that we've been having this discussion many times over the last decade. Is anything going to change?
I don't know. I'm sure a report will come back. One would hope, just because that staff aren't directed to do something, although they take these motions very literally, but hopefully they'll go into the market and say, you know what, here's what other municipalities with like weather to Ottawa are using. And maybe we'll see more beet juice stuff, maybe pickle juice. What other juice can be like melting ice? I don't know. But my hope is staff will do the work of trying to find out other products that could be used in the city of Ottawa.
And we are at the end of the lightning round. Looking forward, now, Joanne, you're going to be away for a few weeks, but what's coming up at Ottawa City Hall that caught your attention?
I haven't really been paying too much attention because I'm on this other subject, but today they tabled the comprehensive zoning bylaw draft number 2. I don't know what happened, but it is going to take up a lot of attention at City Hall over the next couple of months, and they're going to vote on the final at the end. So I'm sure you guys are going to dissect that this month sometime.
John, what else might you and I be talking about next week?
Well, earlier today, actually, the mayors of Ottawa and Gatineau got together, had a press conference, talk about things they want to hear about in the federal election campaign. So I want to hear a little bit of a fallout to that, about what the mayors are asking for. But also there's a report from an economic development report on things we've been talking about on the pod, including the nightmare and how that's going. So, and there's been a lot of talk about the nightmare, even after our pod too. I see it in the media a little bit more. So we'll see
it's going to be at the Ottawa Building Summit next month.
Oh my God, it's hot right now.
I know.
Yeah.
The pod started.
Great. We will be talking about that next week. So Henry, if I can pull you over here. And that's it for this week. So as always, we would love to hear from you. Please leave us a comment, whether that's on Substack, on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, wherever you get this podcast. Please leave a comment, a question. We will do our best to answer it during the lightning round. I would like to thank my panelists, Joanne and John. I would like to thank our producer, Henry.
Thanks, Henry.
I would like to thank all of you for joining us. We will see you back in 7 days.